Hello friends, I'm here today to start something new. Um, I have come here today to start a segment called SOAPBOX. SOAPBOX is just what it sounds like. When we're nerds about something, we have opinions about it. That's why we write, that's why we blog, that's why we watch. And I assume if you're here, then you are interested in my opinion about things. And so there are a few things in the horror genre that just drive me nuts and that I continue to come back to and just think, why do people not understand this? And so I'm going to start doing a series of videos called Soapbox. So today's soapbox is torture porn. I feel like people don't really know what it is or know what it means, and they just sort of throw it around. Of course, I think Saw was the first movie that was labeled as torture porn, and I absolutely do not believe that that's what Saw is. But you know, everything's got to start somewhere. So I feel like in order to talk about what torture porn is, we have to define what regular porn is. So I looked up the definition, which was tricky. Like, you can't just Google pornography. You have to Google, what is the definition of pornography? So I've done that for you to save you from anything that you may or may not want to see. So the definition of pornography is printed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of sexual organs or activity intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. So no aesthetic value, no emotional value, specifically to fulfill a physical human need. So it's like whenever people talk about food porn and they show a giant bowl of pasta or a really juicy burger, nobody thinks, oh, food porn is food and sex. You don't think that. You know it means some ridiculous over-the-top food that just tastes good, makes you feel good, you want to eat it. It's not because it's good for you. So in the same way, torture porn is not, violence with sex or rape, just because a rape scene is not torture porn, because torture porn has nothing to do with sex. They just use the term porn because you know that porn is a purely, gratifying thing with no redeeming value otherwise. Same thing with torture porn. It's torture or violence that has no redeeming value other than to just get you off if you're into that sort of thing, which I would say most people aren't. So I guess the term torture porn, I feel like it almost doesn't apply to anything. Like I mentioned, Saw, I think, is not torture porn. When that movie came out, I remember hearing about, oh my gosh, it's so bloody and it's so violent and it's so hard to watch. And when I finally got around to watching it, at the time it was very game-changing. It seemed very violent at the time. However, you go back and you watch Saw now, and it's really not even very bloody. You don't actually see him saw his foot off. There's a lot of things you don't really see. And also, Saw is, it definitely has a story and a moral, and you care about the characters, or at least I do. And that movie gets a bad rap because people talk about how horrible the acting is, but I fell in love with the characters regardless of the acting. I didn't really mind it. So I definitely don't think Saw is, and I think Hostel is another one. Saw and Hostel are the two that really, I think, are the first ones that were labeled torture porn. And Hostel, while it's closer to torture porn, even Hostel, I don't know if it can really fully relish in my definition of torture porn, because again, I think that the story and the art, I think it does have some value beyond just you watch this because you get off on the violence. And I guess it would be hard for me to identify what movie I've seen that's purely torture porn, because I don't seek out that kind of stuff. And usually if I feel like, oh, this movie's going to be really, really violent, but I'm not going to find any nuggets in there, I'm probably not going to watch it. And there have been movies that I have turned off in the past, and I can't really think of any that come to mind, but I think that's really all I have to say about that. It's not complicated. Just don't think that torture porn means violence and sex. And just because a movie has sex in it, a horror movie has sex in it, it's not torture porn. I heard somebody or read somebody on a blog or Facebook somewhere refer to I Spit on Your Grave, and they were like, oh, isn't that movie just torture porn? It's like, no, it's rape revenge, which is different than torture porn, and just because there's sex in it does not make it torture porn. Anyway, so there's my soapbox about torture porn. I hope you learned something. Do you have an opinion about torture porn? What movies do you think are torture porn? What movies do you think have been unfairly labeled torture porn? And is that a term that we should just quit using? Because I don't feel like it's very helpful. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time on Soapbox. Bye-bye.